Hello and welcome to Money Markets and More with me, Dominic Frisby, coming to you today from the graveyard, and the sun has come out, which means I'm squinting. Today we are talking about the lessons you learn from stand-up comedy, the life skills it teaches you, even if you're rubbish at it. Before we begin, I just wanted to plug a couple of things. I have a gig coming up in the West End in May at Crazy Coq's Piccadilly Circus. Fantastic venue. These are brilliant nights, so if you're free, please come. And second, my Substack, The Flying Frisbee. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. It's going great guns. I love Substack. I think it is a brilliant medium, and eventually I'm going to move this YouTube channel over there. So this is something I've been meaning to talk about for a long time. And so my thanks go to Jonathan Johnson at recruitment firm Auxato for prompting me to write about it and thus prompting this video. Stand-up comedy teaches you lots of things. How to stand on stage in front of a bunch of strangers, how to present yourself, how to entertain people, how to cope with pressure, how to deal with difficult situations and difficult people, how to think on your feet, communication, clarity. These are all really useful life skills that you might call upon in any number of other situations. Everyone should go and be a stand-up for a bit, and I sort of mean that. But there is a lot more to being a stand-up than what you see on stage. Behind the scenes, every comic is running a small business. Every day, you're trying to get gigs, you're sending out emails, marketing, making phone calls, posting on social media, all with the aim of pushing your brand, getting noticed, and getting better work. You're running a diary. You're invoicing for the gigs you've done. You're chasing money from slow payers while trying to extract money from the unsavoury promoters who are trying to wriggle out of paying you. And there are quite a few. You're travelling up and down the country 4, 5, sometimes 7 nights a week to places you probably have only ever heard of, meeting all sorts of different people. And as a result, comics often know the country as well as anyone. I think maybe the only people who know the country better are couriers and truck drivers, lorry drivers. And all the while you're travelling, you're trying to keep costs down so that you can exit the gig at a profit. And on top of all that, but most fundamental of all, you have got an act to write that people find funny. You learn so many skills doing stand-up comedy. Even if you're not destined for stardom, which most of us aren't, the discipline still equips you for life. You just need to look at the many people who started out as comedians who've since gone on to achieve huge success in other fields, from Joe Rogan to Volodymyr Zelensky, to know that there must be something to it. Yet, if you're a potential employer looking at someone's CV and you see the word comedian, I bet that makes you less likely rather than more likely to call them in for an interview. In fact, most comedians who decide they've had enough, they've done it for long enough and they now want to try something else, and that happens because it's an exhausting business and it doesn't pay very well, most find it near impossible to find employment because of the fact that they have comedian on their CV. The only option for most is to set up another business. So I'm now 53. The longest I've ever lasted in a proper job is 3 months, and this was back in 1992 when I was 23. I used to get up every morning, get the tube into Leicester Square, and then do 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. in an office, and I hated it. And it wasn't that bad a job either, but I just hated being stuck in an office all day with no fresh air and not owning my own time. And that's not to say I'm not hard-working. I'm extremely hard-working. You just need to look at my output to see that. So I spent maybe the next 15 years working in occasionally as an actor and regularly as a voiceover. For some reason, I always got more voiceover work than acting work. And about 5 years into that period, in 1997, I started as a stand-up comedian, quite by accident. I'd written a song called The Upper Class Rap, and I was trying to get it released as a novelty Christmas single, and this music agent bloke that I knew from university, a chap called Alex Hardy, said, go and do it at my brother's club. And his brother was Malcolm Hardy, and that club was up the creek in Greenwich. And the gig went well, and they gave me a paid gig straight away. And that's how I got started, quite by accident. And all that time, all that 15 years, I was trying to get stuff published. I wrote 2 novels, 1 million articles, but never with any success. I think I got 1 article in the big issue. But by 2006, I'd made a bit of money, some in property by accident, some from voiceovers. I'd been at various points the voice of such eminent products as First Direct. I was the first voice of First Direct, Nintendo 64, get into it, and the National Lottery. And my dad had made a bit of money too, and between us, we were trying to figure out how to turn our bit of money into a lot of money, because we were trying to raise 5 million quid to bring Kisses on a Postcard, which is the musical I'm always harping on about, into the West End. And from what I was reading at the time, commodities and gold especially seemed to be the place to invest, particularly with all the growth that was taking place in China. We're in the mid-noughties now, and there are all sorts of people talking about it, but how to meet them and talk to them without having to pay 300 quid an hour, 500 quid an hour, whatever it was. A podcast. I always knew I'd be a good presenter, even though I'd never actually done it. I was good at hosting comedy clubs and other such stuff. And so I approached a mining PR company called Commodity Watch and suggested we start a podcast. And they didn't really understand what I was talking about. So I just went away and did it anyway. And I began interviewing all these various people that I'd heard on the internet, talking so wisely about stuff. And my very first interview was with the billionaire Jim Rogers, who'd run the Quantum Fund with George Soros back in the day. My next 2 were with David Morgan, the silver analyst, and then James Turk, the gold expert. And I quickly learned that you could secure interviews with people above your station, let's say, quite easily, if they have something to promote, such as a book. And a lot of the time, people are quite happy to help out anyway, even if they don't have something to promote. And to my surprise, there were far fewer walled gardens in the world of investment and commodities and mining than in comedy and TV. You'd expect it to be the other way around, because comedy's a communications business, but people were much more open. And one of the people I interviewed was Mary Somerset Webb, who at the time was editor at Money Week. And she said, oh, we need people like you to come and write for us. Come into the office next week and meet Toby, the MD. So I did, and here I am 17 years later, and I'm still writing the same weekly column on the website, a column that's been popular, and in terms of longevity at least, you'd have to say successful. I've since published 3 books. I've got a 4th on the way. I've written several documentaries, one of which was a huge internet sensation, even if I was never properly credited. I'll tell you about that some other day. And much more besides. And I think it's fair to say that that partnership with Money Week has worked for them and for me. But if I had sent my CV into Merrin, all she would have seen was jobbing stand-up comic, okay stand-up comic, voiceover artist, occasional actor, and Johnny-come-lately podcast host, and unpublished novelist. And I don't think for a second she would have gone, I need to get this bloke writing for us. Pretty much any employer would have looked at my CV and passed it by. And I now have this sort of ridiculously random hodgepodge career that I can't even begin to explain. It's happened by accident, and I probably need to get a bit more focused, but I'm a financial writer, a comedian, a singer-songwriter, a comedy music video maker, a TV presenter occasionally, and a voiceover artist, and a very nice chap who works in internet marketing and likes my output, but despairs at its lack of clarity, with whom I correspond quite frequently. He put this graphic together to try and explain what I do. So I think there are two things to learn from that episode with Merrin. One, I don't believe there is any substitute for face-to-face meetings. Meeting someone in the flesh inspires trust in a way that not a million emails can. Hello, doggy, doggy, doggy. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons I think I haven't had a lot of stuff published. I just sort of sent it in. I'm not even sure it got read a lot of the time. It's much easier to ignore a letter or an email than it is to someone in person. And often, by the way, that works in reverse too. You really admire someone online for whatever it is that they've written or they've said, but then you meet them in person and you quickly realise this is not the type of person you should be listening to. So that's one. Second, when you meet someone through the medium of an interview, for a podcast, or most likely, rather than just a regular meeting, it's like a heightened encounter. You get through so much more in an hour than you otherwise would. So if you get to know anyone who hosts a regular podcast, you will see that they're total mavens. How many people do Joe Rogan or Konstantin Kisin or Stephen Bartlett know as the result of their podcasts? How powerful are their networks? They are super connected and they're trusted as well. So any introductions they make will carry weight. So as it turns out, stand-up comedy was an ideal training ground for being a financial writer, because in comedy, if the audience doesn't understand you, they do not laugh. And if they don't laugh, you die. And so that instills the discipline of clarity on the comedian, and he learns that very quickly. You also learn that you have to entertain people if you want to keep their attention. No such discipline exists in the world of financial journalism. Obfuscation is everywhere. It almost pays to be obfuscatory, because then you can say, oh, I didn't really mean that, I meant something else. Some of the broadsheet journalists, guys who regularly win, Finance Journalist of the Year or whatever it is, they are so dull. They're about as dull as ditch water and about as clear. Half the time you have no idea what it is they're droning on about. I barely make it past the first paragraph in a lot of cases. But you know what? They probably got the gig because their CV was right. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and share this video if you enjoyed it. A reminder about my gig and subscribing to my Substack. The links to both are in the description. And if you're interested in protecting your wealth in these extraordinary times, then be sure to own some gold bullion. And my current recommended bullion dealer is the Pure Gold Company. Whether you are taking delivery or storing online, premiums are low, quality of service is high, and you can deal with a human being. I have an affiliation deal with them, and there is a link to the Pure Gold Company in the description, as there are also links to my Substack and to my West End gig in May. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye. Or for watching, I should say.